So I said there were more videos coming, and this next one is about my whole history of epilepsy. Um, so I got to thinking about why I'm actually making this video because obviously not a lot of people care. A lot of people have their own story with their epilepsy history. Some people do care. Some people do want to know kind of what's possibly in store for them who are new to epilepsy because they don't really know what to expect. I do want to start by saying, though, if you do fall into that category where maybe you've had a seizure and you're scared that you might have epilepsy, a one-off seizure does not mean you have epilepsy. Epilepsy is something that needs to be diagnosed. And that can really only be diagnosed with testing and if you've had multiple seizures. So, just take that for what it is. I'm not a doctor, but just know that. I do know that for certain. But anyways, I really was thinking about why I am making this next set of videos here because again, this might be a two-parter. This is going to be a little lengthy. We'll see how far I get today. It's probably take at least an hour, I'm thinking, but we'll see. We'll see how far I get. I got to get around and do some stuff here in a little bit, but anyways, sorry, I keep getting sidetracked. Yeah, I really just want to make this for, myself and anyone, in my family who, if they do have a seizure, they might possibly, in the future when I'm not here, they might have something to look back on and say, oh, this is what happened to him. We do have a jumping off point to know that this could possibly be genetic. Now, I do not have genetic epilepsy. This is just generalized seizures as far as the doctors know. So there's that. But again, it doesn't mean that there won't be people down the line who don't have, or my extended family who don't end up, getting epilepsy, because epilepsy can affect anyone. Which actually brought me to my next kind of epiphany of videos that I do want to make, which is on relationships. Because relationships and epilepsy, obviously, they're everything. I mean, your romantic relationships, your relationships with your parents, siblings, your friends, they dramatically change when you get epilepsy and when your epilepsy escalates. So that is what my next set of videos is going to be about once I conclude this next segment here. But anyways, let's go ahead and jump into it. So, also, you might see several cuts today. I am having quite a bit of allergies, so just be prepared for that. But anyways, I'll go ahead and jump into it. So my first seizure that I really know of, and can definitively say, like, yeah, this was a seizure, was on June 18th of 2015. And that was the day before my sister's wedding, which is why I know the exact date. Even though they didn't call it a seizure, they didn't know what happened. I don't know what happened. I know it was a seizure because just the way everything, transpired during that time, and in the time that, just the events and the way everything occurred. Looking back, it was a seizure. My sister and I were looking back at old photos from when we were children, and we were trying to put together a collage of photos of her. Her husband was doing the same on his own. And as we were flipping through the pages, I kind of just stopped and spaced out. And she said that I wasn't sitting there long. I think it was like 30 seconds to a minute, which is a good amount of time. But I sat there and I didn't say anything. I wasn't really responsive, but she didn't really try to get my attention. And she said all of a sudden when I came to, I jumped up and held my head and was talking about how bad my head hurt. And when that happened, I don't really remember it. Even to this day, I do remember talking about um, kind of, I do remember coming out of it, but I don't remember so much talking about my head hurting. And I remember being freaked out because I had never experienced anything like that. So of course I wanted to go to the hospital because I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know anything about seizures. I didn't know what had just happened, and I of course got my parents together and said, "Okay, let's go." We went to the hospital, and I felt stupid because I got there and they just ushered me into a little side room and was like, "Well, nothing's wrong with you. Like, what do you want us to do?" And I'm like, "Well, you know, I don't know. This is what happened. I don't. This is for you guys to find out, not me. Do what you guys need to do." And they said, "Well, there's nothing else we can do." And I said, "All right, well, then send me home." So they sent me home. That was the end of it. Nothing came of it. And I didn't have any follow up events until probably about 8 or 9 months later. At the time, I worked at a coffee shop, and I was at work, and this one was a little more. This one was a little more intense, and I remember this one pretty fully. It took quite a bit of time for everything to come full circle. And I uh, I remember I was basically I live around the corner from the coffee shop that I worked at, and I would leave work on my lunch, go home, make food real quick, head back, sit in my car, eat, head inside, and that was kind of like my routine for the most part, unless I went like somewhere local just to buy food real quick. Um, and I went ahead, I did my regular routine, sat in my car, ate, got out, and I remember walking in across the parking lot into the store. It was busy lunch hour, and or not we, I walked through the door, and I didn't remember this next part until way after the fact. And I'll explain why. But I apparently had walked past someone I knew from high school, and uh, she went to say hi to me, and I just said I got to go to the bathroom, and was like, okay, and um, I like rushed into the bathroom, and I do remember being in the bathroom, but I don't remember really what happened. I just remember not feeling well. Um, and then the next thing I knew, I was standing in our back room, and I was completely dazed. And I remember like coming to, and there are these two girls that I worked with, and they're just like standing there wide eyed, like deer in headlights, freaked out because they didn't know what they were looking at. They just said that I looked like I was gonna pass out. And they sat me down. They were like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I don't know." I said, "What just happened?" And they said, "You said you threw up in the bathroom." And I said, "I what?" And they're like, "Yeah, you said you threw up in the bathroom." So one of them went to go check the restroom to clean it up. They said, "Well, there's no throw up in the bathroom. Like, you didn't throw up." And I said, "I feel like shit." I said, "I feel like I threw up." And and I feel so nauseous. I feel horrible. My head is killing me. And God, sorry, my cat is acting like he's gonna throw up now. Of course, as I say that. And but yeah, so I sat there, and I remember just feeling horrible. And I do remember this part fully. The part I don't remember though is from the time that I walked into the store until I was standing in the back room. That whole part didn't come around until later. Um, But yeah, so I sat there, and mind you, I was at the end of my lunch. I sat there for another hour and a half because I was in no shape to work. And then I finally got up, went back to work, and finished out my day. Now, a couple days later, the girl who I had ran into in the lobby, she had texted me and said, "Hey, are you all right?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" And she said, "Well, you didn't look like you were all right when I saw you at your job." And I said, "Wait, you saw me?" I said, "What are you talking about?" And she goes, "Yeah." She goes, "I went to, say hi to you." And she goes, "You like completely like brushed me off, like said you had to go to the bathroom, and you didn't look okay." And um, I was like, "Oh," and I thought about it for a second. I was like, "That's right." I was like, "I did see you." I was like, "I vaguely remember it now." And then everything started to come around, and all the memories started to come back as to what actually happened. And I do remember now that I actually walked into the restroom. I do remember brushing her off. I do remember saying, "I got to go to the restroom." Um, and I just like kind of pushed past her, and there was nobody really around except the two of us and like maybe a couple people in line. Even though it was a small store, there was really no reason for me to like push past her the way I did. And I just walked straight to the restroom, went inside, locked the door, and I think I did throw up in the toilet. I made it in there, and either that or I dry heaved. I don't know which. But and then I like went over to the sink, and I just remember like being so limp and out of it that I almost couldn't walk. And I got myself together, and I like kind of rushed into the back room. And then I don't remember actually turning the corner into the back room because that point is a blur. That point I don't recall, but I do remember when I came out of it, standing there, and the two girls were sitting there like freaked out because they didn't know what they were looking at, and I don't know how much time had passed. Um, After that, uh, I didn't have any major events for quite a few years. I did have a lot of focal seizures, which at the time I didn't know what was going on. Mind you, the whole time, stupid me didn't, I had already been through that previous experience where the doctors at the hospital told me, "Well, there's nothing wrong with you, just go home." So I wasn't about to go back to the hospital. But I wasn't about to go back to the hospital. So I was like, well, clearly there's something off, but I'm not going to do anything about it because I'm not going to go through that experience again. So, um, the relationship that I was in at the time, I told her about what had gone on. I told my parents what had gone on, and they were kind of like, yeah, like it makes sense. And They were kind of freaked out too, but it was what it was. And I remember I didn't have any major events for a couple of years. A relationship I was in at the time, I had a couple focals when I was with that girl, and but it was nothing crazy. Like it was just, I don't know, maybe 10 seconds is all, 30 seconds. And she was understanding. She kind of knew how to handle it. She wasn't freaked out. She worked at a hospital, so um, it definitely made things easier to communicate. But it was cool. And then that relationship ended, and the next relationship I got in, I started having a lot of focals when I was with her, and then again, though, never any real major events, but the focals I did have with her started lasting a lot longer. I mean, like to the point where it was like an hour, 2 hours later. And I remember there was one incident, probably the longest one I ever had, was, I mean, it was like 3 hours, and I actually wasn't with her. I was with my aunt and cousins, and we were sitting in the living room of my grandpa's house. It was 9 o'clock at night. The last time I looked at the clock, the next thing I knew, I looked at the clock and it was midnight. And the one thing that I always would do, and I always would, and I don't know, I mean, it would help me come around faster. I felt like is I would ask questions, and I would ask the same question over and over and over because I wanted to piece together what had happened that day, where I was at that moment, what had been going on in the moment that the seizure had started. And I would look at my phone text messages to see, okay, who's the last person I talked to? How can I piece together what's going on? And I just felt like that always helped. But I don't know. I mean, that was just me. But yeah, so I remember 9 o'clock. Next thing I knew, it was midnight. And I remember I told my aunt, I said, okay, I know I've asked this question 100 times already because I know it's what I do, but what happened? Like, I'm here now. This is me. This is Eric, and she goes, well, you've been out of it for a while, and you keep asking us, what's happening, or where are you, what's going on, what's happened today, and when did we get here, and what did we do, and like what did we do today, and that was pretty much it. And that one was a long one. That one was probably the longest focal I've ever had, where I can say that I don't remember anything. I don't remember any of it. I can't piece together any part of it, and that kind of freaked me out for sure. But yeah, luckily the relationship I was in at the time, again, that woman was super understanding. She was very easygoing about it. The one thing she understood was just stop, listen, understand what it is I need, and you know, let's take it one step at a time. Don't freak out, because you freak out, it's gonna make it worse. Not just for me, but for everybody. And so yeah, and I had never had a tonic-clonic at that point, so that was another thing. If I had had a tonic-clonic, it would be a different situation. But yeah, again, wasn't about to go to the hospital because of my bad experience before. So, and I know that's something that maybe a lot of people who are new to epilepsy have dealt with, where the hospital tells you, well, there's nothing we can do, there's nothing wrong with you. Go see a doctor if you're concerned, or, yeah, go see a doctor, get a referral for, a neurologist or a specialist or whatever. But anyways, after that, I never had any, for years, I never had any major events. I had actually moved out of state. I was out of that relationship. I had moved out of state for like at least probably 2 3 years. I didn't have any, not even any real focals, honestly. I would go like a year or two at a time, whereas previously I would have several a year. Um, and I don't know if it was just a combination of the stress I was under at the time or what it was. Stress is my biggest factor when it comes to my seizures. Um, Stress is my main trigger. I don't really know that I have any other triggers. I'm not photosensitive. Again, this isn't genetic epilepsy. And from everything we've gone over, with my neurologist, my epileptologist, you know, there's no real cause for what I have going on. So, anyways, again, moved out of state. And yeah, it was actually pretty awesome for a couple years. And I just lived life. I felt pretty normal again. Oh, I left something out. Backtracking, actually, this is a major event. This is actually the first grand mal I ever had. I'm surprised I forgot about this. November of 2017. The first grand mal I had, I was sitting in my car. I was in a new job at this point, no longer working in the coffee shop. And a couple other jobs had actually already come and gone. I was between jobs looking for something new, and I found this job finally. And anyways, I was in my car. I was on my lunch, although I really never took lunches. I had just kind of taken a break, really. And I remember I leaned my seat back. And again, this was a situation where I never remembered things until kind of after the fact. And this one, people never really needed to explain to me. Things just kind of came back to me in time. And it didn't take that long for it to come back to me, maybe a few hours. But I, next thing I knew, I was sitting there. I'd closed my eyes to kind of just relax. Next thing I knew, I was in an ambulance. And I was like, I remember just sitting there like, oh my God. I knew something related to whatever I was dealing with had happened. And I said, I asked them, I came to, and a paramedic was trying to stick my arm with a IV. And the girl was doing a horrible job. She had to stick me like 4 or 5 times. She was brand new. This had to be her first day on the job. And the guy was like, okay, not like that, not like that, not like that. And my arm was destroyed with bruises for like a couple of weeks. But that's beside the fact. And I went ahead and so I remember I sat there and I asked the paramedic, I was like, what happened? I was like, because I don't remember anything. And he goes, well, apparently, you were sitting in your car convulsing. And he goes, and someone called 911. I go, who? He goes, just some passerby. He goes, we got there, nobody was around. He goes, so we don't know who called 911. And I was like, what the heck? I was like, I said, I don't remember anything. I was like, so that makes sense. He was like, I mean, he's like, do you have a seizure or anything? I said, I have this weird thing that happens. I said, but the doctor always told me I was fine. They always tell me to go away, basically. So I got to the hospital just a few minutes later because it didn't happen far from another hospital. And this time it was a totally different experience. The doctor who was there was like, okay, you got a seizure. He was like, there's no doubt about it. He did a blood test and he was like, your white blood cell count is like through the roof. He goes like, which is a clear indicator that you had a seizure. He goes, but other than that, he goes, I can't find any other cause. He goes, you don't have a family history. He goes, we talked for a while about just going over everything that could possibly be a reason why. My blood test, other than that white blood cell count, came back normal. So he goes, yeah, you definitely had a seizure though. And I did lose my license for 6 months at that point. But the good news is I didn't lose my job. I didn't have to stop working because my job actually literally the next day promoted me. My manager did. She showed up at my house after what happened. She was like, hey, the next part doesn't really matter, but just a little side piece. She was like, there was like a promotion that had come out. They were trying to find 2 people to promote, and I didn't want the promotion. I actually, at the time, I felt like it was kind of pointless. And she goes, how come you didn't apply for the promotion? I was like, I would have a new kind of superior. I was like, and I know he's not a fan of me. I was like, so I said I didn't bother applying for it. And she goes, no, you should promote. She goes, I think you're the perfect person for it. And I was like, all right. I was like, if you think so. I went ahead and applied, and of course she gave it to me. I knew she just literally told me she would. And that meant I got to travel across the country to go train at our facility, at our headquarters. So that took up like 3 months of my time. Also in that time, I had gone to go see not just my primary care, but I had to go see my neurologist. So that took up some time as well. And the neurologist I had seen, he had put me on, he didn't put me on medication because my EEG came back just normal. and my EEGs came back normal for years. There was no indication that there was anything going on in my brain that they could really see. But there's a lot of people who are like that though. There's a lot of people who their EEGs come back normal and they have seizures, and then there's a lot of people who never have seizures and they have abnormal EEGs. So they can't really. There's I don't know how much weight I put into that. So yeah, my EEGs were coming back normal, so he wasn't willing to put me on an anticonvulsant or anti-epilepsy medication, or even diagnose me with epilepsy. He wasn't going to. So he was like, well, and I had already gotten the paperwork from the DMV to get my license back, despite having a suspended license. So he signed off on the paperwork right away, and he just was like, yeah, you're good, and got me out of there. And which at the time I was relieved. I was like, sweet, like, let me get back to work. And but it obviously didn't turn out for the best. And I didn't, even though I thought I had my license back, I didn't. I turned the paperwork into the DMV, but they didn't clear my license. They were supposed to clear it at the 6-month mark, but they didn't. I don't know if they forgot to, or if I should have just waited until 6 months had passed to give them the paperwork. But I don't know. It was kind of a headache. But anyways, I went back to work after just 3 months driving around, and it was more like 4. But anyways, I went back to work. I had to go to another training up in Northern California, and while I was up in Northern California, that's when I found out from my boss. She said, "Hey, your license is still expired. Our company just let us know." And I said, "There's no way it could be." I said, "I have the paperwork actually with me." I said, I sent her paperwork. I go, "Let me go to the DMV and find out what's going on." So I drove to the nearest DMV and I said, "Hey," I said, "Yeah, I have my paperwork." I said, "I submitted it." I said, "What's going on?" And they said, "Okay, let's call." She goes, "Yeah, they have your paperwork. Hold on." She goes, "Okay, you're good." And apparently it was a mess up on their part. Despite having the paperwork, I don't know if they forgot to submit it or what, but they wouldn't really say. But basically, it got cleared up immediately, and I told her, I said, to run it again. And she said, "Okay." I don't know if they ran it that same day or the next day, but basically it cleared, and I was good to go. And yeah, so anyways, that was the whole backtrack story. That was my first tonic-clonic. I didn't get put on medication at all, or even get diagnosed with epilepsy. Got that promotion. I did transfer about 6 months later within my company to out of state. Moved across the country to take another promotion. I had lived there for almost 3 years, and during that time, the first 2 years, actually a little longer than 2 years, I didn't have any real episodes at all. I didn't have any focals. I didn't have any tonic-clonics, and it was awesome. I mean, I just felt normal. I felt great, better than I had in a while. And I mean, my stress was super low. I didn't know if that's what it was, but I could never really attribute it to one thing. And I went ahead and just continued on. And I remember I had moved my apartment to another smaller place. And after I moved a couple months later, I think I don't know if it was a focal or a tonic-clonic. I don't know, because again, I lived alone. And at this point I wasn't in a relationship. So, but I was at the time playing video games with a friend online, and he was able to call my family and tell them what he heard. And he said he heard me like make a noise, and then he heard me what he thinks passed out. He thought I passed out because he could hear me snoring. And which, mind you, at the time I was over 300 pounds. So I snored like crazy. So I definitely believe him. Which now I weigh like 193. So snoring's gone, and no one would really be able to know. But yeah, I snored apparently. He said he could hear me on the headset, and then after like a couple minutes, I got up, and he actually put the phone up to the microphone for my sister to, or to the headset for my sister to hear what was happening. I mean, enough time took place between the seizure happening and me being out that he had time to do all this. And my sister listened and was like, I got to get a hold of my mom, like, hold on. And apparently I woke up in that time, turned off my PlayStation, went to the restroom. I do remember throwing up in the toilet, and I was pretty sure it was a tonic-clonic because actually I bit my tongue, and that was the first time that I'd ever done that. And I just felt horrible. There's like a little bit of blood coming out of my mouth, which there was only a little bit of blood like on both sides of my tongue, which the times that I've bitten my tongue, that's the only part that I ever bite. I don't ever bite like across. I don't ever, for whatever reason, that's just how it happens. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And then I thought, okay, you know, that's the first time I've had any seizure activity out here. I'm not gonna panic. I'm not gonna freak out. Let's just take it for what it is. And then a couple weeks later, I think it was either the next week or 2 weeks later, I had another one. But this one, I felt it coming on, and I felt it about to happen. And I was walking through my living room past my couch, and I remember it felt like someone drove an axe into my forehead. And I thought it was a stroke. I mean, mind you, I was like 20. How old was I at the time? I was like 26 at the time. No, I was younger than that. I was like 25 at the time. I don't know. I wasn't that old. But I felt like someone was driving an axe into my forehead, and I remember going like this, and I knew my couch was behind me, so I just fell back onto my couch. And then the next thing I knew, I was like kind of coming to, opening my eyes, and I thought, I gotta go to the hospital. Like I'm not toying with this. And I went to the hospital, and because I didn't know what happened at this point, I was like, I don't know if this is a stroke. I don't know if this is a seizure. I said this could be something totally different, and I told the doctor what happened. And the doctor was like, okay, I'm gonna test you for a stroke. He goes, because that's what it sounds like. And I was like, good, because that's kind of what I was worried about. And he goes, okay, no stroke. And I told him that I had a seizure before. And he goes, yeah, he goes, I don't know that you had a seizure. He goes, but it doesn't sound normal. He goes, you need to follow up with the doctor and get help for sure. And I was like, all right. So that's exactly what I did. I was still, actually I was under 25 because I was still under my parents' insurance. Um, and I had just moved. So what I had to do was basically go on disability because I was going to be going back across the country to stay with my parents while I got help again from my primary care. I had to get another referral for the neurologist. Um, I did that. That took about 2 months time, 2 to 3 months time, I think, from the time start to finish. Came back, told the neurologist everything that had happened, and he was like, all right. He goes, well, sounds like you're having seizures. He goes, you're obviously, it wasn't an isolated event that happened a couple years ago. And he went ahead and put me on 500 milligrams of Keppra, which at the time, I didn't know anything about, epilepsy drugs. I didn't know anything about epilepsy. But he didn't diagnose me with epilepsy. He just, said, all right, we'll put you on like anticonvulsant. And but I had to go through testing. I got my EEG. I got another EEG again. Came back completely normal. Came back. I don't remember if they did any other testing on me. I don't think they did. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe. But basically, all the testing came back normal. But they did put me on 500 milligrams of Keppra, which at the time, again, I didn't know anything about. I keep stumbling over my words. I didn't know anything about epilepsy drugs or anticonvulsant drugs, but that was a very low dose. And I wish he had been a little more proactive as to what he was putting me on, at least a higher dose, because um, in the future that would not hold up. And I'll get into why. Just a couple years later, no, literally the next year. So I go back to Georgia, end up getting into a new relationship, and then that relationship was not as she was not as understanding about my seizures as the previous two had been. She was constantly blaming my now memory issues on me not listening, despite me telling her, like, no, this is my epilepsy, like, this is my seizures that's doing it. This is the medication that's doing it. Like, I'm listening to you. And she goes, no, you're just not listening. And she goes, we just had this conversation. I said, yeah, I know we did. I said, but you have to remind me of things because I can't remember things the way I used to be able to. And it was like that with everything. It wasn't just her. I mean, I was never the type to just have selective hearing. That's not who I am. And so she constantly would just try to blame me for everything and guilt trip me. She would freak out with every little thing I had, every little weird look I gave her, which in reality, I didn't have that many, focal seizures once I went back. I had a couple, but she would act like the world was crumbling down, and that would make things way worse. So the next year, I went ahead, came back to California. I moved back officially, and I, what happened? Yeah, so I came back. I'm trying to think. I did have another seizure shortly after moving back, and I did lose my license again, but I don't remember what happened with that one because I've had so many now. My memory's so bad. All I know is I had another seizure, and I did lose my license again. Got it back after 6 months because everything came back normal. I do remember that part, and they did go ahead and start putting me on other medications. And I remember what happened. I take that back. This is what happened. I got in May of that year, which would have been 2021, I think. No, 2020, I think it was. Yeah, May of 2020. I might have that year off by 1 year, but it was May, I know that much. And May 10th. And I had gotten my it was during finals, and which really sucked. And I was in the middle of a final, and I had I was sitting there taking a final, and all of a sudden I kind of come to, and like my dad really is standing over me, and paramedics are walking into my room because it was an online final, and they're gonna try to get me out of there and get me to a hospital because I had a tonic-clonic, and this was a bad one. This was the worst one, and this was the worst series of seizures I had in my life to this point, and hopefully it will be. But I was like, I just remember like shaking my head. I didn't even ask. I knew what had happened. And apparently the story is my dad had heard a noise, and it was in late spring, and we usually would keep the windows open. So my mom thought maybe I had just closed my window and that's what that noise was. But my dad said no, that noise is something else. And he got up and came and opened the door, and he yelled my name, and my mom knew immediately like what was going on. And she came running, and they called 911. And as I said, they said I was wide-eyed, I guess. I don't really know what they meant by that. Typically, I don't know. My understanding is that my eyes would normally roll in the back of my head, but they said I was wide-eyed. My eyes were rolling all over the place, like looking all around the room as was kind of rigid. But I was I had finally calmed down after a couple minutes, they said, and then I had passed out, and I got up, got again, I was still pretty fat, so the paramedics asked me. I told them, I was just like, you don't need to help me up. I was like, I can stand, I can walk, and they're like, okay, because the hallway is narrow. I wasn't about to try to have them get me on a gurney and push me down the hallway, and I walked just fine down the hallway. I walked outside, down our steps, into the ambulance. And it was stupid because they didn't do a single thing. Like, they showed up, watched me walk out of the house into the ambulance. I sat on a bench, like, next to the paramedics, like I was one of them. Got out of the ambulance, walked myself into the hospital without them getting out of the ambulance, and then I went and laid on the ER bed. That was what happened. And mind you, I don't remember anything after that. I woke up 4 days later in ICU. But yeah, they didn't do a single thing, and I got a $2,000 ambulance bill, and I was like, that made no. I didn't. I don't. I'm not even gonna get into the healthcare system, but it was stupid. But yeah, so that I woke up 4 days later in ICU, not knowing what was going on. The first thing I remember was them pulling a breathing tube out of my throat, and that was just a miserable experience because I was coughing up this thick yellow goo that they use to like lubricate the breathing tube as it goes into your lungs. And I was that was a terrible experience. I continued to cough that up for, I don't know, a couple of hours, but I was so out of it from all the drugs they had given me. And I continued to be out of it for a couple hours. I couldn't talk. I just remember babbling. I remember trying to write things down. And I couldn't, because I could, but I couldn't. My arms were strapped down. My legs were strapped down. And, apparently my arms and legs had been strapped down because I had gotten combative while I was in the ER and the ICU. Because every time I would start to wake up from the original, what's it called, like a sedative they would give me to keep me under, I was too much for them to handle, basically. I mean, I'm not a small guy. I'm almost 6'3", and again, at the time, I was over 300 pounds. So they said that the girl nurses couldn't contain me. They had to bring all the guy nurses over, and it took 4 of them to hold me down. So yeah, so they had to combine two different sedatives to keep me under, and that was like on day 2 or 3 they decided to do that. Well, then the hospital's neurologist came in on day 4, and he said that the whole time that he would come in and see me, he could get me to like he would say to squeeze his hand even though I was under, and he could get me to like respond. And he said when he came in on day 4 and they had done it, and either they had given me too much, or the combination was just too much for my body to handle, he said he got no response at all. And apparently my parents said that he was screaming at the staff to get me to wake up because he said that was not okay. So that's when they woke me up on day 4. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have woke me up until a few days later. But yeah, they woke me up early on day 4, and Uh, I remember I was hallucinating for the first 24 hours. They unstrapped me probably like mm, 6 to 8 hours later after I initially gotten that breathing tube taken out. My arms were all hooked up. I mean, I had IVs going in and out of every arm. I mean, both arms, and I had my like PICC line going in. And I remember I finally like I still couldn't talk. I was still babbling, but I was able to like write enough words. I remember I was able to write out the word. At the time, the girlfriend I had was still the girlfriend I had in Georgia. We were doing the long distance thing, and we had I had written her name, and my mom said, "Yeah, she knows. You know, she's actually gonna come out to see you this weekend." And I thought, okay, I just remember like thinking, okay, like I'm glad she knows what's going on. And then I remember I wrote the word work, and she goes, your work knows. She goes, it's been taken care of. They know what's going on. And at that point I was like, okay, like I care about those two things. I don't really care about anything else. And oh, I think I wrote out school, or I tried to, but that was too long of a word. Um, and yeah, and I didn't really care anyways. The semester was over, finals were over. I'd missed half of my finals. Probably I failed the final that I was on because obviously I had a seizure halfway through. Luckily, I was able to retake it. That professor was nice enough to let me redo it, and I passed. And I think I actually ended up getting an A in the class, so that was cool. But that yeah, I think like probably I don't know 6 8 hours later, I was around enough to be able to speak and kind of make somewhat sense. But I hallucinated like crazy from all the sedatives they'd given me. I remembered I saw this like crazy light fixture on the wall and it was spinning. And I remember telling my mom, uh, and like, God, I was like, that light fixture is screwing with my head. I was like, I need to stop spinning. Like, I need them to turn it off. And she was like, what are you talking about? I was like, you don't see it spinning. And I was like, it's there. And at first, my first thought was maybe I am hallucinating before I ever said anything. But I would look at the ground and I would see the shadow of it. So I was like, okay, if I see the shadow of it lining up exactly with its movement, I was like, I know I'm not hallucinating. And that's when I went ahead and said something, and she was like, there's nothing there. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I was like, this is ridiculous. I was like, I cannot believe that I'm hallucinating and I am seeing stuff. And they would only let one person at a time, and this was during COVID, so it was really bad. Things are like really under lock with who they were letting in, how many people they were letting in, and for how long. And so then I remember I saw my dad, um, and that was kind of emotional. And my dad and I don't know, like we have a good relationship, but it hasn't always been like the easiest in certain circumstances. So, um, we kind of had our little moment there where, you know, it just it was a little more heart to heart about how scared he was, and my parents, they didn't know if I was going to come out with brain damage or what had happened, because I started having in the ER, I started having seizures back to back to back to back, and they couldn't get me to stop having them. And I don't remember anything, and I don't know what happened. And they just said that they wouldn't let my parents see me in the ER. They wouldn't let them in, but they finally went out to the car and got my mom, and was like, hey, like we need you to come in. And when they brought my mom in, she said that she saw me and my arms and legs were like up, both all four up in the air. And she said that it was like the scariest thing she had seen. And she just like yelled and was like, my husband needs to get in here now. Like, I don't care what's going on. I don't care what your procedures are. Like, he needs to see this. And because of how many seizures I'd had and how violent they were, they didn't know what would happen to me. And but my dad said that he was just so grateful that I came out and that I'm okay, and you know, everything appeared like it was gonna be fine. And but anyways, I my let's see, where am I at now? So my sister came in, and my sister was in for a while. I remember that, and me and her, I mean, we just screw around a lot, just talking nonsense, and that's how it always is. And I remember telling her I'm still hallucinating at this point, and I'm seeing the ICU, and it's like a circle, so all the nurses are walking around, and you know, the techs and whatever, they're doing their thing. And I remember telling her, and I can still see it. I mean, that's the thing. I can still see what I saw, even though I know it wasn't real. But I told her, I was like, God, I was like, what are they doing? And she was like, what are you talking about? I was like, they're just playing. I was like, I mean, they can do whatever they want. I get it, but you know, it's funny. I was like, I don't understand. She was like, well, what are they doing? Because she couldn't see, the curtain was pulled. I could only see about half. I was like, well, they're like reenacting like certain scenes from the movie Grease, like, and they have like certain like patients like wheeled out like in wheelchairs and stuff, like, you know, dressed up as certain characters. And like I remember seeing like these old ladies like wearing like the pink ladies jackets and stuff. And I remember like them doing like a little musical numbers. I couldn't hear I wasn't having audio hallucinations, it was just all visual stuff. And she was like, apparently like she would look, but she wouldn't see what I was seeing. But she didn't say that I was hallucinating. But she was like, I don't know, they're probably just bored, you know, like, it's probably just whatever. And she wasn't going to tell me I was hallucinating or crazy, but she told me after the fact, like, yeah, she was like, they weren't doing any of that stuff. I was like, oh my God. And so then later on that day, like, I saw them reenacting, like, the Charlie Brown's first Thanksgiving. And that was funny too. That one wasn't as like dramatic and theatrical, but it was funny nonetheless. And then by that night, all those kind of hallucinations were gone. Those are the only two real hallucinations I had like that. But that light fixture one was ridiculous. Like, it screwed my head for 24 hours. Even after I got out of the ICU, because the following day they moved me out of the ICU. And when they realized I was okay, and I had told the nurse, I had this male nurse, I told him, I was like, dude, I gotta pee so bad. And he was like, oh, you just go, you have a catheter. And I was like, what? And he was like, because I've heard how painful catheters are when you get them taken out, and like, you know, when you get them and stuff. He was like, yeah, you have a catheter, just go. I was like, I can't just go. I was like, it's not working like that. I was like I'm trying. I was like, I can't. I was like, but I don't want this. I was like, and he was like, well, I can take it out. And I was like, take it out. I was like, I don't want it. Get it out of me. And he was like, okay. And I was like, because I gotta go. And I was like, I gotta do number two. I was like, he's like, oh, well. He was like, I can't get it out that fast. He was like, it's gonna be a minute. And I was like, all right, well, he's like, you're gonna have to go here in a bed. You're gonna have to get a bedpan. And so that was a miserable experience in of itself. And but yeah, so he came back to get it out after all that was done. And yeah, if you've never had a catheter as a guy, just know it sucks. It hurts. I don't know if mine was excruciatingly painful, but it really is miserable. But I'm not gonna get into the finer details of it. I might make a very short video to tack on to this segment about what it's like. My sister even said, like, as we talked about it later after I got to the hospital, she goes, I believe it. She goes, I believe it's more painful for a guy to get a catheter taken out than it is for a girl. She goes, because mine wasn't bad. She goes, it really was nothing to cry over or, talk about. I go, yeah. I go, mine was. I go, and I said, there was blood. I said, it sucked. And I said, and I had a great nurse. I said, he did a great job taking care of me. He knew what he was doing. This guy traveled all over the country to different hospitals. I go, he was seasoned. Let's just put it that way. And yeah. So, anyways, that nurse actually got me up and walking the next day. I was able to use the toilet that was in the ICU. That was really why I wanted to take it out, because I did not want to go to the bathroom in the bed. I did not want to have to use bedpans. I did not have to want to use any of that. I didn't want a catheter, period. But yeah, I was super shaky though. My muscle, just function. It's crazy what 4 days of no movement does to you. And I got up and I had to regain my strength. And but yeah, he goes, yeah, let's get you up and walking if we can, that way you don't have to go to physical therapy or anything. And he got me walking. I walked like all the way across the hospital, and then on our way back, we were crossing a nursing station in another wing of the hospital, and I had a seizure. And I remember this one, and it was like it was like a tonic-clonic, but I didn't go out at all. Like, I remember every part of it. I remember the whole aspect, and luckily there was like a rolling chair there, and they just pushed me into the rolling chair, and I like kind of plopped down into it. And I mean, I don't really know how to classify, because I was seizing, I was convulsing, but I remember my body going rigid, but that was about all that happened. And I went down into the rolling chair, and then that was pretty much it. And then later that day, the neurologist came in, and he said that he was happy I was awake. He asked if I knew who he was. I said, well, I know you're the neurologist. I said, he goes, do you remember my voice? I said, no, not really. He goes, I came to see you pretty much every day while you were in here. And sorry, it was a gnat. And he goes, I came to see you pretty much every day that you were in here. And he goes, we're going to get you, he goes, I know you take 500 milligrams of Keppra every day. And I said, yeah. He goes, have you missed any days? Did you miss any that day? I said, no. I said, I never miss. And I truly never do. And my mom even said, she goes, no, he's very good about it. And so he goes, yeah. He goes, so we bumped you up to 1,500 milligrams of Keppra. And he goes, that's in the morning and at night. He goes, so you're actually taking like 3,000 milligrams a day. And mind you, the 500 milligrams was in the morning and at night too. I should have specified earlier. And but that, he goes, and then you were still having seizures. So he goes, I heard you had a seizure earlier. He goes, so I'm actually adding Vimpat as well. So he added Vimpat, and I have not had a single convulsive seizure since. And we're going on, what month are we now? It's been 3 years now. So we're going great in that department. No convulsive seizures, and I hope I never have one again. Not to say I never will, but things look good. Sorry, just adjusting a little. I know we're at an hour at this point, so I don't know how much longer I'll have. But anyways, yeah. So they moved me out of the ICU. Actually, probably, I don't know, sometime in the afternoon, probably 4 or 5 hours later. That was really all he had to say. He just wanted to test my motor skills. The neurologist, he did, made sure I had my hand strength and I could move my legs and feet and everything. Um, then he asked who I had seen because he worked with the same neurology team that I had originally been seen by before, within that group of the neurologists who put me on the 500 milligrams. And I told him the name of the guy who put me on the 500 milligrams. He goes, I can't believe he put you on 500 milligrams. He goes, that's ridiculous. He goes, I know old ladies who take 500 milligrams. He goes, you should have been on a much higher dose. So long story short, got me out of the ICU. He went ahead and put in the referral for me to be seen back by his group of people under someone else. And I went to a regular hospital bed. I was there for another 24 hours. All in all, I was there for like 6.5 days in the hospital. It was more like 7. But and then so basically the 7th day, I got wheeled out of there, and I went home. And I remember just being so happy to get out of there, but at the same time being nervous, being scared, because I had sorry, it's a house phone. I had been scared, obviously, because of everything that had happened. I mean, that was a pretty traumatic experience. I'd never had anything like that before or since. And got home, showered, was still regaining my strength. I obviously was not at 100%, and it took probably I would say probably another 2 weeks until I felt like I was fully as strong as I was before. But it took a few days until I felt strong enough where I was like, yeah, like I can do everything, there's no limitations at this point. Yeah, and then, so that was what happened in May of 2020 or 2021. I don't remember which year that was. Whatever year it was that Tom Brady won the Super Bowl with Tampa Bay. So I'll have to look that up. I'll add that detail into the information below, so to make it more accurate. But anyways, of course, after that, my seizure activity spiked and has been going up ever since. Focus has been going up. Again, I don't have tonic-clonics. I don't have convulsive seizures. So the amount of activity has gone way up. Excuse me. I ended up having to get put on more medication. The next medication they put me on, I believe, was Topamax. I had to get taken off of it, though. I had horrible side effects from it. I would go through bouts where I just couldn't speak. I would be in the middle of a conversation, even if my train of thought was there and I knew what I was saying. I'd be talking to you just as I am now, and then all of a sudden go, and I couldn't get the words out. I just couldn't talk. And I remember I would have to like kind of tap somebody else, like, I need you to finish a sentence, like I need you to finish the words. And I was on it for maybe 2 weeks, and I went back to the neurologist. I said, I got to get off this. I said, it's doing something weird to me, doing something weird to my brain, and I can't talk. I said, I just can't. And I said I started feeling like I was going to have convulsive seizures again. That was another thing. And I said, I think it has something to do with this. I said, because I didn't feel like that prior to getting put on this. I actually felt better before getting put on Topamax. And so she took me off of, the neurologist I was seeing at the time, she took me off of Topamax and she put me on Trileptal, which Trileptal has been great. I'm still on it now. I don't have any issues with it. I'm on 900 milligrams twice a day. And I'm trying to think. So yeah, I was on that, and then again, activity continued to go up, and then she pretty much just told me, well, She goes, I can't really do anything else for you. She goes, so I'm going to put in a referral for you to go to an epileptologist. And that kind of picks up the story going into the VNS story. There's not a whole lot left to add to this video, and we're at an hour, so we got maybe 20 minutes left. So she put in the referral going for me to get sent to Loma Linda University. My voice is getting hoarse now from talking so much. She put in the referral for me to go to Loma Linda University Medical Center. I went, and the very first appointment I had with the epileptologist that I still see today, I was sitting in my car, again, working, but I had taken a break just so I could have this appointment with him over, video chat. I actually had a vocal seizure, and I was down for about 30 seconds, and then I came out of it, and he goes, I want to see you tomorrow. He goes, you know what? He goes, no, he goes, I want you to be seen tomorrow, is what he said. He goes, I'm going to call our team. He goes, and I'm going to have you admitted to for an EMU, which is the epilepsy monitoring unit, if you don't know what that is, which is where they take you and they admit you to the hospital or to a facility for as long as they need to, typically, but average is like 7 days, what they plan for, which is what they planned for with me. I got out in 6 days, but basically the idea is that they want to be able to record your seizure activity. So they hook you up to an EEG for 24 hours a day, and they basically, they don't try to induce seizures, but they just try to capture anything they can, because they want to find out where it's happening in your brain. They want to find out everything that's happening in your brain, because they need the most data they can go on to really diagnose the issues that you're having. And it's the only way they're really going to be able to help you, or one of the best ways they're going to be able to help you, which I think is way more beneficial than a 30-minute EEG you're going to have. So he goes, I want you to be seen tomorrow. He goes, let me call the team and see if we have any open beds. And sure enough, they had an open bed. So he called me back, and he said, hey, we got an open bed. He goes, can you be here tomorrow? And I said, let me make some phone calls. I said, I'll see if I can be there. Give me a couple minutes. I called my boss, said, hey, I gotta be out for the next week. I said, they want to see me. She knew I was already getting seen by a specialist now. I had already told her they were going to send me to a specialist. So called, she knew. I told her, she was like, all right, go, do what you got to do. And I called my parents. I said, hey, can you take me tomorrow? I said, they want me there for the next week. And they were like, all right. So they took me, and got there early in the morning. They hooked me up. Your head's all hooked up for a week. And basically, they don't want you getting out of the bed. They want you bedridden for a week. Not to say you can't move your legs at all, but it's basically, you're a seizure risk, so they don't want you to fall. If you need to go to the restroom, they have a commode next to the bed for you. So they'll help you get out of the bed, and they'll, kind of facilitate. They're not going to watch you to the bathroom, but they'll just be on the other side of the curtain to make sure everything goes smoothly, and then you let them know when you're done. And so I had a really good experience with that, though, but they were having a hard time getting me to have seizures, or getting me to have anything that was really giving them enough concrete evidence of what was happening, because even though I was having focals, it wasn't enough for them to really see what they wanted. They wanted something stronger. So they basically took me off of all of my meds on day 4, 5, I don't remember, day 4 or 5. They took me off of all of my meds, just like that. And it was another 24 hours had passed, still nothing. And I was like, well, I was like, maybe this is gonna take longer than a week. And then all of a sudden, it just happened. It just came, and I started having, like, I wouldn't say back to back seizures, but I started just having seizures, and it started happening. Continued to happen for a couple hours, and I just felt horrible. I was throwing up everywhere. Um, and there's a camera watching you, mind you. So like if I'm sitting here, it's directly across the room, like at the ceiling pointed at me. So they're watching you for, obviously any facial changes or body changes, and then they obviously had you hooked up so they know what's happening. But yeah, and mind you, that's 24 hours a day that someone is sitting there watching you. I mean, they have people rotating in and out. So, it's not like there's not someone watching you. If they see something, they're coming in and saying, "Hey, are you okay?" Because there were times when I didn't feel anything and they saw like a blip on the monitor and they said, "Hey, are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" And they said, "Oh, we saw something. We just want to make sure." And I said, "Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm fine." And I went ahead and started having seizures, throwing up everywhere, felt horrible. I remember all that. I never really blacked out at all. And I mean, it took me half a day to really kind of come around, but they came in, they said, "All right, we got what we needed. You're going back on all your meds, like now." And so they put me back on all my meds. It took me a little while to kind of gather that, to kind of piece that together. I said, "Am I on all my meds?" And he said, "Yeah, you're on it now." I said, "All right, cool." I said, "I wasn't sure if you guys were saying you're gonna put me on it or I am on it." And they said, "No, you're on it now." So because there's a ton of people coming in and out the whole time. I mean, this unit that you're in, there's people everywhere tending to you. They're usually very good. Not everyone's gonna have the same experience if you do go through this, but if you're at a good unit, hopefully it's good like that. But yeah, they got everything they needed. So when I went for my follow-up, with my epileptologist, and he told me all the information they found, this, as I said in my VNS video, the main points where I'm getting all my seizure activity is my right temple right here, left lobe right here, this general area on both sides, and then right back here, I don't remember if it's on the left or back side, right at the base of my skull, right at the base of my brain. And I think that's it really. There might be one little spot somewhere I'm forgetting, but yeah, that's pretty much where everything's happening. But basically, it's enough spots I don't qualify for any other surgeries at this point that would be deemed really beneficial, that are invasive. So the VNS is what I ended up getting. I ended up telling him, like, "Yeah, let's do it." And because we kind of went over all of our options, but it took us a while to kind of even get to that process because we wanted to see what we could do. In the meantime, I ended up going on zonizumab, and the side effects from that really were the drowsiness. I didn't have any side effects from trileptal. I should say that, that never bothered me. Side effects from Keppra, didn't have any. Again, memory loss is the biggest issue, but I don't know if that's from the seizures or if that's from the Keppra. Vimpat, never had any side effects. But yeah, zonizumab, the drowsiness killed me for the first, I don't know, maybe 3 to 6 months. And it only would last for about an hour in the morning, but I was good after that. And after about 3 to 6 months, though, it went away. I'm not bothered by it at all anymore. I don't even notice. But I'm still on it, so I'm on 4 meds right now. I'm actually in the process of getting off of my Keppra. And the only reason we're getting off the Keppra is because I've been on it so long. I kind of started to feel like before I got the VNS that one of my medications wasn't working quite right. I felt like my seizure activity had been going up slightly, to whereas before my seizure activity had maintained a relatively steady level. So we just I decided that I wanted to get off it. My epileptologist was like, "Well, I want to wait, he goes, because we're talking about the VNS now. We're going to wait and see what happens with that. So, again, we went through all that, and I said, I still want to get off something. Let's change something up, whether it's the Keppra or the Vimpat, you decide. And so he said, yeah, Keppra is going to be easiest to get you on and off of, so we'll start there. So we changed my night dosage. My dosage now actually, it changed a little bit from what I had previously mentioned. It had gone up, it had gone down, it had fluctuated a little bit over the last few years, but as it currently had stood, it was 1,000 milligrams in the morning, 1,500 milligrams at night. Now we got me off of the 1,500 milligrams at night. It's just 1,000 in the morning, 1,000 at night, and actually I feel pretty great. So yeah, I also, in the meantime, because my seizure activity seems to be high in general, he put me on a medication. I'm going to butcher the name, so I'm not going to say it. I'm just going to type it in the bottom because I don't have it in front of me. I'm going to have to go look. But it's basically it's a rescue med. It's something that he really only prescribes to children, he says, but he says children can't usually tell him how they feel on it. So he goes, I don't really know what to expect. He goes, I don't really know how you're going to feel with side effects. He goes, they say there's not a drowsiness component, but he goes, I don't know that I necessarily believe it. So he goes, you can tell me what you think, but I'll tell you right now, I haven't had anything. So I take that once in the morning, once at night, 10 milligrams each. Again, it's more of a rescue med. I don't know if I said that, but I take that in the morning and night. That's made a huge difference as well. I do also have clonazepam as a rescue med, and that I've always had really great success with that helping. But I've been extremely cautious with it, not to abuse it, not to overuse it, because I just have, not a fear of it, but that idea just kind of scares me. Just, I don't know, addiction scares me. Even though I've never been addicted to anything in my life, I don't like the idea of it. But yeah, so that's all my medications that I'm on at the moment. As time goes on, I'll update these videos. That's really the extent of where I'm at. That's the whole video. Like I said, this video took the better part of an hour, over an hour. We're at an hour and 20 minutes almost. So we probably will be by the time I hit stop on this. But trying to think if there's anything else I can add. For those of you who made it this far and watched all the way through, if you don't know the difference between an epileptologist and a neurologist, you should definitely look for an epileptologist if you're unhappy with your neurologist. And you have the means of finding an epileptologist in your area, because an epileptologist specializes in epilepsy. They are a neurologist, but they are going to be able to do more for you than a neurologist will. Now my epileptologist also has a nurse practitioner that works alongside him who is a neurologist, but she does also kind of focus on epilepsy, which is why she works alongside him. So she's great. She actually is the one who's helped me with my VNS more so than he has. She's oversaw a lot of it, and I trust her. I think she's awesome. But anyways, yeah, find out about an epileptologist if you're unhappy with your neurologist, for sure. And other than that, I don't think there's anything else I can really say. That's pretty much my whole seizure activity and my whole seizure story, epilepsy story, start to finish. So if I think of anything else, I'll add it in the comments below. I will add that medication updates below that I need to look up, because I don't know the name offhand. But yeah, that's it. So if you guys have any questions, you guys want to know more, like I said in my previous video, go ahead and comment it in the section below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I see it. All right, thanks.